Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Sporting Max. Where today we're joined by South East Melbourne Magic star Darren Lucas. Welcome to the podcast, Darren. It's amazing to have you on. How you going?
Good, Max. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. So I'd like to start off with sort of what was your childhood like, and what sports did you play growing up?
So I played mainly basketball, but I was also a tennis player. I played, I think it was rep tennis. So my parents eventually said, you've got to choose between tennis and basketball. And I was a better basketball than I was tennis player. So, so I never played any football or cricket. Never really was my thing. So basketball, I think my first game of basketball, I didn't shoot one basket. And then my second game of basketball, I had like 46.
Oh, wow.
So
how old were you at that age?
I was about 7. That's 7. So
crazy.
Yeah, it was a good way to sort of get into a sport that I love, and I still play now. So
where did you grow up?
Grew up in Templestowe. So I went to Manningham Primary School, then Templestowe High School, and then I went when I was 17 to the Institute of Sport. I got got asked to go there for 2 years. So I went there from age 17 to 18, and that was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because living with mum and dad, I was a bit of a straight kid, bit of a goody two shoes, and never drank, never been out. So going to the Institute of Sport, living with 10 blokes that I'd played against them in tournaments, but I didn't really go with any good mates at the time. But I've come out of it with 10 amazing mates, so we still catch up to this date. So.
So in 1986, you played your first year in the NBL with the Nunawading Spectres. How did that pathway to the NBL sort of come about, and how did you try to establish yourself as a player in this team and in this league?
Well, it's sort of funny, because before I went to the Institute, I never heard of the NBL. And I was a little bit, part of me sort of went, what happens when I turn, 18, 19, just basketball finish, and then
done.
Yeah, and then slowly Dad introduced me to the NBL. We went to a couple of games. That was before I went to the Institute of Sport. So when my first offer from the Spectres was, I think, maybe $3 or $4 grand for the year. So it wasn't really anything to sort of live off.
Yeah.
So my dad always sort of said to me, look, always have a job, always work. So I was the only guy in the NBL at the time, or throughout my whole career, that actually had a job as well. So Nunawading was I had Barry Barnes as a coach, so it was pretty hard coming in from a league where you're pretty much the best player, one of the better players in the league, at the Institute of Sport, and then all of a sudden you come to an NBL and you're you're not the bottom, but you're not the top.
Yeah. Now, ahead of the 1987 NBL season, the team changed their name to the East Side Melbourne Spectres. Why did that change of name occur, and what was your perspective on this at the time?
Look, that was I don't know why they changed it. Look, they did have, probably one of the reasons, they had a really bad logo. The logo looked like a Ku Klux Klan. And that was from years ago. So I think that's why they changed it, because we had a lot of really good, Americans coming through, and they obviously voiced their issues with it. So we changed to the East Side Melbourne Spectres, and sort of then to the Magic. But it was essentially the same owners all the way through. So I stayed with the same team. They just changed names from Spectres to East Side Melbourne's, quite a few times.
Yeah. In just your third season in the NBL, your average, I think it was around 37 minutes, alongside 23 points, 3 boards, and 3 assists. Now, playing more minutes, and I suppose a larger role in the team, obviously finishing 8th on the ladder that season with 14 teams, just missing that 6-team finals by only a few games. What was that season like through your eyes, and being able to elevate your game and take it to another level compared to like your first season?
Look, I think a lot of that was to do with Brian Goorjian being out. What year was that again you're talking about?
I think it's 87.
Yeah, okay. So Gorge came in a little bit after that.
Yep.
So we had Barry Barnes to start off with, and then Brian Goorjian was pretty new to coaching. He came on board with a couple of rough guys, me, me, Wayne Larkins, Shane Froling. So there wasn't a huge amount of, talent like there is today. We're pretty gritty, hardworking sort of players. So, look, Gorgon coming in and Gorgon was a very defense-orientated coach. That's the way we sort of developed. So I was very much an offensive player during my junior career. And all the guys I grew up playing with sort of couldn't believe that I, won the Defensive Player of the Year because they reckon I never played defense at all. So, so it was probably, look, with Gorgon coming on and starting off with us, that was really exciting. He was good at building young talent. Look, as it went on in my career, I found out he wasn't that great with his older players, but he was very good at bringing up the young talent. Like when I was retiring, he was bringing up Jason Smith and Sam McKinnon. So he's obviously got that down pat. When the young guys have had enough, he brings in the new guys to start a new era. So that year where we just missed out in the finals, that was, I suppose, Brian's first year, I think, if I went back to that. And very much, we pretty much got close to the finals most years after that. And when you go from spending your whole life from, age 7 to, 20, winning every grand final, and then all of a sudden, you're not even making the finals. Because the junior team I played with, we didn't lose a game in 10 years. So then all of a sudden you come to the NBL and, you win half, you win some, you win,
50 games in a season,
So, it's a big change.
So how did you adjust to Gorge's coaching style and his sort of plays when he first came in?
Look, Gorgon ran a lot of plays for different individuals, depending on the talent we had at the time. We had Vince Hinchin, we had Bruce Bolden, we had Rob Rose. We had some, amazing Americans come through. We also had Arnie Duncan and a couple of guys that were a little bit slower. So really, depending on the American of the year of the 2 years, because I had 12 years there, so it was really depending on the talent we had at the time. Like there was, 1 year or 2 years where I used to get a long full court pass from Dean Udoff, one of our offensive strategies. Another year was I did a lot of back cutting, and he ran plays for my back cut. But then, all of a sudden you get Rob Rose and players that can, not only cut, but they can shoot and do everything. They started running plays and you become more of a role player. So, look, my first year I was, I suppose, one of the main shooters. And then as I went on, I became a role player defensively. And that probably extended my career somewhat. So, look, I take my hat off to Gorgon to, changing the way I played, because it probably wouldn't have survived the way it was going, with the way I played. Look, I'm not a skillful player. I was very much a ratty sort of shooter, fadeaway jump shots, back cuts and all that sort of stuff. I wasn't like an Andrew Parkinson who had a really nice shot.
Now you mentioned winning DPOY a couple of years in a row. How do you view your role of defense in a game?
Well, I actually remember the first time that I was given a job to actually play defense. It was on Wayne Carroll. We're playing the Giants, and Gorgon said, I don't want Wayne Carroll to get the ball. And obviously I impressed him enough to go, oh, listen, he's a bit of a dog with a bone, hence my nickname Junkyard Dog. He could point me in the direction of players and go, shut him down. So that probably took away from my scoring. My focus was more on defense than offense. And over the years, it changed, the focus of the way I played basketball. Like now, I'm so not offensive, and all I do is play defense. I can still play good defense now, but my offense, as my mates will attest, is not as good as it was when I was 20.
Now, after a few seasons of sort of just missing out on finals and then losing a semi-final, yourself and the Spectres made it to the grand final against Perth in 1991. Can you expand on this series and where you just couldn't get it done in the end?
Yeah, look, I think it was it's probably the talent at the time. We had, and I'm trying to remember, I think we had Bruce Bolden and Kent Lockhart for that season, and maybe even Dean Uthoff. Look, we got to the finals. Perth was a more rounded team, and they had size, they had skill, they had I think they had James Crawford back then.
Yeah.
The Alabama Slammer. So that was our first finals or Brian's first finals as a coach. And it was our first NBL finals after a couple of years playing all together. So I think it gave us a taste. And I don't know of any team that has just come in and all of a sudden gone and won finals and they've never been in the finals before. You've got to, finals is a completely different ballpark. You play more defense. It's a slower game. So it's a different thing. So look, our first year, 91, of being in the finals was tough. And it taught us, obviously, 92, my first NBL final and ring. That was probably my highlight of my career because, I stopped Andrew Gaze. We had other players. We had other players on the team, but I remember Ian Stacker saying, you're a superstar for stopping Gaze. And that's what I love doing. I love being recognised for either shooting or defence or, nowadays it's doing the splits on the dance floor. So every year of my life changes.
You mentioned that 1991 season. That season you also filmed the Wild One dance alongside Andrew Parkinson. Can you tell me a bit more about this?
So that was pretty funny because Parky and most of those guys can't dance, right?
I've seen a couple of your dance moves at the start of that video.
Yeah, I don't mind the old dancing, and it was funny because, the producers were, stepping in and going, "Parky, you got to move a little bit to the left, and a little bit to the right," and then Dean Uthoff, he's an old mate of mine. Dean wouldn't have danced ever in his life, I don't think, and John Dodge, he's one of my good mates now. He's 7 foot, and John and the dance floor, it's oil and water. That never happens. So it was pretty funny. And at the end of it, they actually said, "Does anyone want to go in the booth and dance on their own?" I went, "Oh yeah, I'll do that, no problem." And the funny thing was, I actually thought that I was going into the enclosed booth on my own, right?
Yeah.
I didn't realise all the other boys would be sitting out watching the TV screen of me cutting some moves and letting loose. So when I came out, they were all like, give me jeers, and I'm like, oh well,
Yeah. You mentioned that 1992 season. You guys were renamed the South East Melbourne Magic, and obviously that might have had some effect taking out that championship. So what was that first sort of championship experience for you like?
Well, we'd actually just merged with St Kilda. So we had Parky come on board and a few other guys come on board. So there was a bit of disruption to the start of that year because we thought we'd done so well the year before. And then we get these guys and we merged the team and basically there's a lot of role players in that team. So, Parky and I joke about it, in the finals when Andrew Gaze's team got the ball, the Tigers got the ball, Gorgon had subbed me on, right? As soon as we got the ball, he'd sub Parky on, right? So that was, that's our joke, and a lot of the players I'm still mates with, we'd get 6 minutes on, 6 minutes off. But most of my career, I sort of averaged between, 25 and 35 minutes a game, except for pretty much the last year of my my career. So that 92 season was really special. It was more special because coming into the finals, Darren Perry, had an injury. And he was our point guard, and you're up against the wall. Your captain's gone down, your point guard's gone down, and you're playing against Melbourne Tigers, your arch rivals. And all of a sudden, we just played well. I think I kept Andrew to 12 points.
Oh wow!
And he didn't shoot one outside basket the whole game. They were all foul shots. So the referees took care of him in that game. So yeah, look, that was so exciting after having so many years of winning championships as a junior. Then all of a sudden, I don't know how many years it was. I think it was about 5 or 6 years in the NBL before that of no wins. And all of a sudden we come up and win it, and then it's like, okay, so this is what it's about.
Throughout the next few seasons, you guys made the finals, however, just couldn't get to the championship. But I want to touch on the 1994 and 95 season. You took out the NBL's Defensive Player of the Year back-to-back. How does it feel to be recognised for your defensive efforts on court?
Yeah, that was really good. So, in 93, I got second best defender in the league. And then 94, 95, I got best defender. So that was, I suppose, recognition for the hard work I'd done. And being an offensive player through my career, and all of a sudden pretty much giving that up and going, well, listen, our team needs a defensive player. And for me to stay relevant and in the team, I've got to, obviously change and adapt and start playing defense, and put a lot of my focus onto that. So that was probably, again, one of the highlights of my career, because I looked at that as not a skill thing, but more an effort thing. Defense is not so much skill, it's more so effort, and knowing where your player goes and knowing your players. So I think those two awards plus the 92 championship are probably the highlights of my career for playing basketball.
I believe it was your last season in the NBL in 1996, and what a season it was, winning the championship against the crosstown rivals in Melbourne Tigers once again. Can you elaborate on this season for you guys? Yeah,
look, it was a funny season for me because I was captain with John Dodge, co-captain. So I was captain 95, 96, and I started to get less court time. So I went from 35 minutes a game to 15 minutes a game or 13 minutes a game because we were bringing the young kids up. And, and I'll be honest, it was really hard for me to sort of handle because, although it's a team game, you want to be given the same opportunity. And, look, we won, I won as captain and I won as in 92 as one of the main players. So, and in 96, I wasn't really one of the main players. Obviously, I was a part of the team and captain and the figurehead. But that was a really good year because, look, we had Jason Smith on boards, Sammy Mack, Frank Drimmick, Tony Ronaldson, so a bunch of good blokes that I'm still friends with now, and we still go away and have drinks on Lux Coach. We go on wine tours together. So that was a really good year. Look, it was a struggle for me because it was a hard year, minutes wise. I could have gone to another team in 97. And probably got less money, but I decided to stay with the Magic for 97 and just not play and take on a different role in 97 to fulfill my contract. So, but 96 was great. It was to win it with John and I as captain, and to beat the Tigers. And and back then we were getting 15,000 to a game, and basketball was really at a peak in its in its people watching. So I think the hard thing for me, I don't watch NBL much now. I think if the NBL had some history in the teams, so South East Melbourne Phoenix, technically our old South East Melbourne Magic. It'd be not because Chris Anstey did a post the other day about the Mavericks. He was saying how the Mavericks, he only played with the Mavericks for a couple of years, but they take care of him whenever he goes back to Texas. And I actually messaged him. I said, wouldn't it be nice if the NBL teams did that, in Australia? They just don't. There's no more Tigers. There's no more Magic. My singlet was retired after playing 12 years with the same team. I don't know whose else was, but, where have they gone, There's no history. Exactly. And I think that's where basketball loses out because the AFL, they've got history. You look at the NBL now and they don't have history,
all the Melbourne teams and things like that are gone, and South East Melbourne Phoenix and United, we saw them incorporate a bit of the Tigers with one of their heritage round jerseys a couple of years ago, but they don't seem to be taking on or fulfilling any of that role anymore, even though you know, they didn't really change clubs or anything or didn't go away.
Yeah.
They just switched their name. So they should probably incorporate a bit more Tigers in there, and the Phoenix.
Yeah, well, you look at like all the other states, like Adelaide 36ers, you know, like Scotty Ninnis, you know, I don't know whether he's in the Hall of Fame, but he's, you know, there's a lot of people with the history in the same NBL team.
Yeah.
And you look at Melbourne and you've got United and Phoenix, and really United is Tigers.
Yeah.
And Phoenix is South East Melbourne Magic. And it'd be nice
absolutely.
if, you know, like boys were talking about, why don't we have a Tigers versus Magic game?
Yeah.
You know, that'd be fun at halftime. Just take 10 minutes during halftime, see some of the old guys get around. You know, we've always thought that'd be good because there were a lot of supporters back then.
Yeah.
And they haven't died. You know, they've just got older.
Yeah.
But they'd still want to go and see, you know, Andrew Gaze play, have me on Andrew Gaze and whoever else, you know, Parky shooting the threes and, you know, Chris blocking Bradkey.
Yeah.
You know, there's, you know, it'd be nice to have that sort of history because then I'd probably embrace the league a little bit more.
So how do you reflect on your time playing for the sort of 12 years in the NBL?
Look, I loved it. It was I loved running out. I think the biggest thrill for me was the actual playing. I didn't particularly like training too much.
Yeah.
But I was sort of lucky because I was the only player. It was myself and Ray Gordon were the only players that had jobs in the league.
Yeah.
I was sort of lucky that Brian let me only train once during the day. So he'd go, you don't have to go to the 10 o'clock training. You can go to the 2 o'clock training. So, you know, that probably extended my career by a couple of years because, you know, even though we were getting paid 100 plus grand back then. But, you know, I always had a job. So it made it easy for me to retire because it just meant that I worked rather than working till 2, I worked till 5. Whereas a lot of athletes nowadays struggle when they retire from basketball or football and they've never been in business.
Yeah.
So, yeah, look, I look back at my 12 years and I loved it. You know, look, I suppose there's 3 different types. There's my junior career, which I loved. Then there was the Institute of Sport, which I've got a great bunch of mates that I hang out with all the time. And then my NBL career, you had, I suppose, more of a mix of players coming through, like Darren Perry for a couple of years. You know, Dean Udoff for a couple of years. So, you know, you had different players come and go, Scotty Ninnis. So, you know, it was great. And I got some good friendships out of it. And, you know, you made some good money out of it. And the crowds were amazing. It'd just be nice if that was sort of recognised more for players like us.
So what are your biggest highlights of the great rivalry of the Magic versus Tigers matchup?
I think my biggest highlight was obviously 92. You know, Andrew only got, I think, 11 or 12 points in the grand final, and he didn't get one outside. I don't think he got one outside shot. I think it was all foul shots.
Wow.
You know, and I actually, that 92 championship, I grabbed they had a tiger as a mascot, and I tore the tail off the tiger and I stuck it in my boot of my car, and I actually had it hanging out the boot of my car for about a month, dragging along the tiger tail. So, 92 and stopping Andrew. Look at Andrew. Andrew's such a decent person and a lovely person and a really good competitor. He wasn't dirty. You know, he used to try and, you know, give you a push this way, so he'd go that way. You know, little things you get to know. And look, I love the idea of, you know, you're playing against different players like Shane Heal and those sort of players. You know their weaknesses, you know their strengths, you know how to stop them.
After playing with them and against them.
Yeah, after playing against them for so long. And look, you know, playing for Australia with these guys, you got to see them from a different perspective on the years I played for that. So, you know, it was great. The 12 years was really good. But 92 was definitely my highlight, stopping Andrew. And I think one of the things that stands out was we had a dinner or a lunch a couple of months afterwards, and Lindsay Gaze was talking, and on the screen was a photo of me in the first centre jump, and I was basically almost inside Andrew's jockstrap. And Lindsay basically said, Darren, that was you for the whole series. So that was a really nice compliment too. So
Throughout your career, you've played with some amazing and superstar players, like you mentioned, Jason Smith, Bruce Bolden, Sammy Mack, Rob Rose, Mike Kelly, of course Chris Anstey and Andrew Parkinson, who we've actually had those two on the podcast, by the way. Who do you think, from your point of view, is the best player who you've played with throughout your career?
Played with? It's a sort of tough question because Chris is probably the best player after he, because I didn't play with him when he was at that level.
Yeah, after he left.
Yeah, after he left, he went and played NBL and NBA. But I also played with Luke Longley.
Wow.
When I was at the Institute of Sport for a year. And he wasn't obviously the player he was, when he was age 15.
Yep.
But he obviously went to great achievements. But I'd probably have to say Rob Rose was the best player when I played with him, and I looked up to. He was he played hard defense. He was really good at offense, and he played a hard game. He didn't give up at all. And look, there were certain guys that you'd play with that were really good offensively, but they didn't do anything defensively.
Yeah.
And Parky, no, that's not you, mate. But so it's so I'd probably think Rob Rose, because he did it all for me. He rebounded, he dunked, he could shoot, he could play really good defense, and he was a really good bloke too. So I had a couple of years with Rob, and I'd probably say Robbie, yeah.
Now, your business, Lux Coach, can you explain to the listeners what it's about and the inspiration behind Lux Coach?
So Lux Coach it's basically a luxury bus with a cocktail bar in it. So I'd been in IT and photocopiers for 25 years, and then all of a sudden I went to a festival at age 45, 47, I think it was, and the owner of the festival said, "I'll come back on my party bus," and it was something that was like 50 years old, and you could hose down with a hose. It was disgusting. And I sort of thought, at my age, surely there's got to be something better to go to wineries and go to festivals and just travel in. So I bought the bus about probably 4 years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Took me a couple of years to get it designed. So the people that designed W Hotels and Bond Bar and Baroque, so some really cool bars and nightclubs in Melbourne, designed the bus, the interior. And the guys that built all the furniture for Crown Casino High Rollers rooms built the interior. Wow. So I launched that a month before COVID, so really bad timing, but the business has been going amazing, for 21st, for kids, for 50th, for 40th, for 30th, for corporate functions, especially coming into Christmas. Like, it's got a big 50-inch pop-up TV. You can have margaritas, you wouldn't know what that is, but, espresso martinis, you can have all that. And you can also do presentations. So it cuts across the corporate life, it cuts across the fun life. So I'm corporate and I'm fun. So it's me to a T. So I'm building 10 of them. So hopefully, in about 5 or 6 years' time, we'll have, one in every state and maybe a couple in Melbourne and a couple in Sydney. So it's really taking off. So it's luxcoach.com.au. Just for a plug.
What would be your best advice to anyone wanting to become a successful player in the NBL and be successful like yourself?
I'd say train hard and work on your weaknesses. So one of my weaknesses halfway through my career was my outside shooting. And Ian Stacker worked on me for a while, for about a year. And I came back the next year and I had Steve Carfino, who's he's a commentator now. He said to me when he was playing, he said, "Luke, you've been working on your shot over the break because it's improved." And I was like, "Yeah." And look, missing out on 2 Olympic squads, I wish I had have actually gone to the coaches and said, "What do I need to improve on?"
Yeah.
Because to miss out on 2 Olympic squads by 1, 2, or 3 people, so I was in the squad of 15 and 12 went. I wish I had have spoken to Barry Barnes or Lindsay Gaze or whoever the coaches were at the time and just say, "Hey, what do I need to get on this team? What do you need me to improve at over the next 2 years?" And then set a goal and go, "Okay, I've got to improve on this." Whereas when I was in the teams, I was just playing the way I played. I wasn't thinking about I was thinking, well, if the coaches like me, they like me. Whereas I wasn't thinking, how can I talk to them? And get a dialogue with them and then go, "What do you need me to do to help your team and to be on the team?"
Yep.
So, work hard, find out what you're bad at and improve on it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thanks, Darren, for coming on the podcast today and putting aside half an hour or so of your time to come on and have a chat. It's been an absolute honour.
Cool. Thanks, Max.
Thanks,
Keep
Darren.
the good work going, mate.
Thanks, Darren. Stay tuned, everyone, for some more Sporting Max.